Let's call this meeting to order. Good evening. My name is Cynthia Jackson. I am the interim vice chair of the Police Conduct Oversight Commission, and I'm going to call this regular meeting for January 12th to order. I want to welcome everyone who is joining us this evening. I'll note that we have remote participation by members and staff as authorized by Minnesota statutes, section 13D021, due to the declared local public health emergency. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll to verify a quorum.
Commissioner Jackson.
Here.
Commissioner Opti.
Here.
Commissioner Sarah.
Present.
Commissioner Crockett.
Here.
Commissioner Jacobson. Commissioner McGuire. Commissioner McGuire.
Here, sorry.
Commissioner Pino.
Present.
Commissioner Sparks.
Present.
Commissioner Sylvester.
Here.
There are 8 commissioners present.
Let the record reflect that we do have a quorum. At this time, I'd like to welcome our new members, Jordan Crockett, John Sylvester, and Carrie Mcguire. Would you all like to share a little bit about yourselves so we can be familiarized with you? Who wants to go first?
I can go.
Yay.
Hi, how's everybody doing? My name is Jordan, and a little bit about me. Married. I've been married 3 years now. We live in Phillips. We live in a duplex. I work remotely, I guess now since Corona, but I work at Vanco. They do like software for faith-based organizations and education. Love sports, love people, meeting people, and definitely got a passion for civil rights and speaking up for those who can't speak up for themselves.
Thank you. Who do we have next? Kelly or John?
I'm happy to go next.
Okay.
Thanks for not making me go first. I'm Carrie Mcguire. I'm been a resident of Minneapolis since 2013. I'm from the Chicago area originally, but I'm also married and my spouse is from Minnesota. So I think that generally means you're pretty much settled here once you marry. I really enjoy Minneapolis. It's grown on me a lot. I do immigration law. My focus is removal defense for detained persons. So I work a lot with people who have had some sort of interaction with the Minneapolis Police Department and are now in ICE custody, or who are working with the Minneapolis Police Department on visas for crime victims. So kind of in a couple different capacities. Besides that, there's not much going on during the pandemic, so I go outside and walk and run, and I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. Mr. Sylvester, are you here with us this evening?
I am. Yes. Thank you so much. My name is John Sylvester. I live in Ward 4. I've lived in Minneapolis for about a decade. We've been here in the Willard Hay neighborhood now for about 2.5 years. My wife and I and my little son. I work downtown Minneapolis as a paramedic for HCMC. My primary focus at the department right now is homelessness in our interaction with unsheltered patients that we serve and how we can kind of do that a lot better. I am really looking forward to learning more about perspectives that probably differ from mine, and this is a phenomenal opportunity. So, thank you in advance to everybody who's going to teach me some things.
Well, thank all three of you for putting yourselves forward, to join us on the commission. I just want to say welcome again, and I am so looking forward to serving with everybody. So with that, we will now turn to the agenda for tonight's meeting. The agenda is before us. Are we going to put that up on the screen? or are we all just going to look at it separately? This is my first time, everybody, so I'm kind of just trying to not make any mistakes here. And there was a copy that was posted to the city's LIMS site for public access yesterday. And may I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Madam
Oh.
Vice Chair, just for the sake of expediency, would it be okay for us to have a joint motion to both adopt the agenda and accept the minutes of December 8th, 2020?
I don't have an issue with that. Casey, are we allowed to do that?
Yep, that
Okay.
would be a perfect
Okay,
motion.
can I have a joint motion then to
Yeah.
adopt both?
Yeah, so moved from
Okay.
Commissioner
We
Pino.
have a motion, a second.
Commissioner Sarah seconds.
All right, thank you. That has been adopted and the minutes are listed now. So did we, well, I kind of jumped ahead of myself. Was there going to be any discussion on that motion? I want to follow the rules here, so are we all satisfied with that?
I'm happy to move to a vote if you are.
Okay, yes, I am. Did anyone have any discussion they wanted to bring forth? No? Okay. I will then ask the clerk to take a roll on the motion to adopt the agenda and the minutes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Aye.
Commissioner Alpi,
Aye.
Commissioner Sarah,
Aye.
Commissioner Crockett,
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobson, Commissioner McGuire,
Aye.
Commissioner Pino,
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks,
Aye.
Commissioner Sylvester.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
There are 8 ayes.
Okay, thank you. So that's been adopted, and the next item of business, no, we already did that. We have a proper motion. I'm sorry, you guys, I'm reading off a script because I'm not real practiced at this. I'm real rusty. So we've already added the minutes and the agenda. So our next order of business is the acceptance of public comments. But before we open the floor to comments from the community, I'd like to recognize Council Member Fletcher, who requested the opportunity to address the commission this evening. He has a presentation for us. Welcome, Commissioner Fletcher. Are you here with us this evening? We want to welcome you.
I am. Thank you for the invitation.
There you are.
Madam Chair and Commissioners. And I'm really thrilled to be able to present to you today, and especially on several of your first meeting. I know there's several of you who have stepped up into this role, and I appreciate your work. So thank you for that. To provide a little bit of context, I'm here today to talk about our ongoing work on facial recognition technology and surveillance technology generally. And wanted to just provide a little bit of context for that. And then I also invited a couple of community partners who've been working on this to join me in presenting the information. So as background, for those of you who were on the commission last year, I came by when we were working on data privacy principles. So the first step in sort of establishing a data privacy framework for our city was to adopt principles that described a shared set of values. And we came by and had a discussion about that basically just said we recognize that we need to protect people's data and be thoughtful about what we're collecting about people and what kinds of surveillance people are subject to as they're moving throughout their days in our city. Having passed those principles, then we convened a community work group around to discuss what the next steps were. And there was a sort of broad coalition that's formed around particularly surveillance technology, thinking about what technologies is the city using to watch over what's happening in our city and what data are we gathering about our residents and visitors. And we began the process, as many cities have, of taking those data privacy principles that the council passed last year and beginning to turn them into ordinance, to think about how we might create more formal processes around making sure that there's transparency about what technologies we're using, and that there's an opportunity for the public to intervene if technologies are proposed that we don't think are appropriate. As a part of that conversation, it became clear that there was significant community interest in the issue of facial recognition as a first step, and it's something that we might want to move more quickly on than we were moving on the broader surveillance technology project. And so we separated that out into an ordinance that we are moving towards passage on. So now's a good time for us to be talking about this. We'll actually be posting draft language in the next week and scheduling a public hearing. So we're to a place where we actually have this drafted. And so I wanted to come here because I had had a couple of meetings with members of the PCOC where we had been talking about how can we build a stronger relationship and a more generative working relationship between the council and the PCOC. And one of the requests was when you're working on policy that has a public safety implication to come to this commission for feedback and guidance and to share ideas. And so we are here today to talk about our approach to facial recognition work that is fairly fully cooked. We're to a point where we have a draft that we can show you, and then also to take feedback more broadly on surveillance technology to see what ideas or priorities might be here, and that you'd be getting very much in on the early end of concept development for that. So we're sort of looking for feedback more broadly on the topic, but also specifically on the question of facial recognition and how that might have an impact as you're thinking about public safety policy. So with that being said, I want to, we have a short PowerPoint presentation, and I want to invite a couple of guests who I've brought with. Munira Mohammed from I think is on the call. And I'll let the guests introduce themselves and talk you through the way that we've approached this topic.
Hello, everyone. My name is Munira Mohammed. I hope you guys can all see me. So yes, I am working with Councilmember Fletcher as well as our coalition PostMe. So I'll let my other colleagues introduce themselves before we get into the briefing. Elizabeth, could you introduce yourself? Perhaps Elizabeth hasn't jumped on. Maybe Chris, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Chris. I am a freelance cybersecurity and penetration tester, and I'm the co-chair of Restore the Fourth Minnesota, part of the PostMe Coalition.
Lovely. So I'm going to start screen sharing if I can, and then just jump into the presentation. So 1 second, please. All right, lovely. Let me go back to the beginning. Can everyone see it?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so again, we're here to do a quick briefing on the facial recognition ban ordinance that we're about to introduce. We're working with Councilmember Fletcher with our coalition, Public Oversight of Surveillance Technology and Military Equipment, or PostMe for short. It's dedicated to surveillance advocacy within Minneapolis and Minnesota broadly. So again, just to talk about why we're here, why is facial recognition so important that we'd like to introduce a ban on it? And it's quite simply that it's incredibly unreliable, that it has really horrific racial biases and lack of regulation, leading to really devastating consequences like false arrests and lack of transparency, and really harmful impacts for people, especially as we've seen with all the unrest lately. Protesters are especially impacted by this. And I think it might be important to note the recent events at the Capitol. There was a lot of facial recognition technology used at the Capitol to find rioters and protesters. And I think it should be noted that this is probably the only population that facial recognition does work on, that Capitol rioters were largely white men, and that with any other group or any other demographic, the technology is just horribly unreliable, and that's why we want to regulate it. So my colleague Chris is going to talk about exactly how does facial recognition technology work, and then we'll just jump into some of the provisions within the bill.
All right, so this is I wanted to highlight this. So as I said, my name is Chris. I am a cybersecurity person, and I work with tech every day. So, and I've actually done a lot of work with facial recognition and parts code and the Amazon recognition. This is the infographic that you've seen is the result of some great research at MIT that was presented to the United States House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. And you can they blended together a whole bunch of faces and or they did a whole bunch of facial recognition on a bunch of different faces, and then you can see like the composite results of that. In the center there, you can see that the average success rate is around 79% if you're a darker female, and you can see just the gap between performance between darker skinned individuals and lighter skinned individuals is incredibly high. And you just have to ask yourself, like, I think Councilmember Fletcher actually said this at one point. It's like if we had a vendor come to us and say, we have a phone that works 100% of the time with white men, but this phone only works like 75% of the time with Black women. You have to ask them, well, I don't think we're going to buy your phones. So yeah, you can see this is from 2018, but yeah, you can see that the discrepancies between how facial recognition impacts different populations is fairly severe. Munir, could you go to the next slide, please? So facial recognition works on what's called computer vision, which is a form of artificial intelligence. What it does is it just breaks down the image and tries to look for identifying patterns. So you can see how this is what we did is we took a picture and we fed it into Google Computer Vision. And then what they did is they looked at that picture and they gave us some confidence ratios. So, all right, we see 68% that this picture contains technology. 62% think that there's some photography, that there's an electronic device in here. Like what it's showing is how confident Google is that there are these objects in that picture. Seems fairly benign. If you could go to the next one, Munir. So this is another picture that they fed into the exact same system. And you can see that it has, similar scenario. Guy, just pointing a thermometer at someone's head to take his temperature. But Google thinks it's a gun, and it thinks it's a gun with an 88% that's how confident it is that there's a gun in that picture. So yeah, and then this is actually research done by Emun Solomon, and what he did is he cropped it and he just turned up the contrast. And then he resubmitted the picture into Google Cloud's API. And you can see, it's a white hand, so there must not be a gun there. The thing about artificial intelligence is that this is the kind of results you get when you have a code base that isn't easily reviewable, and it's just the way that machine learning works results in these kinds of unpredictable and not terribly easy to fix outcomes. To make a very complicated thing, try it more simple.
Thank you, Chris. So just to talk about what's actually in the bill. So the bill is quite simple. It's 2 or 3 pages, and it's essentially banning the city from acquiring, obtaining the use of facial recognition technology. It also bans the entering into third-party contracts. There's also some exceptions, though, that I'm sure you guys would have questions about. So things like single-user cell phones are exempt. Just using your face to open your computer or your phone is exempt. Also, if the technology is bundled with something else, another software, that's also exempt. So there's also exemptions in that beyond just the straight ban. And we also just want to note that this bill does not ban the private use of facial recognition technology. So then people like small businesses can still use this. But yeah, that is the quick overview. And here's the timeline that we're looking at again. So we hopefully will have language public by this week. And then in late January, we'll have a community feedback session just so that community members can give their feedback, give their opinions and thoughts to Councilmember Fletcher, as well as members of our coalition. And we expect to be in committee and vote time sometime in February, early February. But yeah, that is the briefing.
Okay.
Very good. So I I hope that this is the kind of presentation that the PCOC finds valuable, and we'd love to hear feedback if there are commissioners who have a perspective on the use of this technology or advice on directions we should go with this policy as this coalition considers its next steps. And thank you to everybody for participating.
Well, we want to thank you, CM Fletcher. We really appreciate this information that you brought to us tonight, and I'm sure as a commission we will be contacting you with comments or questions. So thank you again very much for coming tonight. So next, I would like to open the floor and invite comments from the public, and any community member may take up to 3 minutes to address the commission.
And Madam Chair, we may need to advise those who are on the call from the public that in order to be recognized, they'll need to press *6 to unmute their phone in order to request, state their name and request recognition.
Well,
I see
thank
that
you for
Commissioner
that.
Sarah has her hand raised.
I would like to offer a comment if I may.
I'm not sure of our procedure here. Is this time reserved for the community, or are commissioners allowed to speak as well? I don't know. Someone advise me.
Yes, Madam Chair, the commissioners requested recognition, so you should recognize her.
All right. I'm sorry, Commissioner Sarah, please go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I hope my remarks are worth it. Okay, so thank you, Councilmember Fletcher and the PostMe volunteers for being here. I think this is a perfect example of how the council and PCOC can work together. So thank you for this opportunity. And thank you for just bringing me up to date. I'm interested in this kind of thing, but I don't personally have a background in technology, so that's kind of where I get lost. So I found this super informative. One thing I would like to suggest, I do have a background in criminal defense, so I'm kind of familiar with how this might play out in a criminal defense or, a prosecution. And I would like to suggest some kind of limiting language in your ordinance or a standalone ordinance that talks about how this could be used in criminal cases. And it wasn't an original idea of mine. As one example, there's a Minnesota state regarding confessions. It's Minnesota statute, I wrote it down, 634.03. And that statute, it prohibits a conviction based on a confession alone. And it also limits when a confession can be used in trial. Like it can't, if the confession was coerced, it can't be used as evidence in trial, for example. I think something like that could work very well in this space, a city ordinance that would say something along the lines of facial recognition technology shall not be sufficient to warrant conviction without evidence of the offense charged, evidence that the offense charged has been committed. That tracks exactly with the ordinance or statute I just cited, nor can it be given in evidence against a defendant in trial. And by saying in trial, it still could be used to potentially identify a person, conduct an investigation. It could lead to a charge perhaps, but it wouldn't be the only thing standing alone at trial. And it also wouldn't be introduced at trial because with such a high error rate, particularly with people of color, even just the introduction of it, even if the defense attorney tore it apart, it could really cause a lot of problems. So that was it.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Sarah. Thank you. Very pertinent points there. I would like to invite any further comments.
Vice Chair Jackson, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to ask a question as well.
Commissioner Jackson, or Camo. I'm sorry.
No worries. And if Councilmember Fletcher, you would like to respond to Commissioner Sarah before I ask my question, be more than happy to yield my time to you.
I can respond briefly. I appreciate that feedback, and I think in looking into this, one thing that's worth noting, and that I should have actually said in the context, is that this ordinance is drafted as anything that the council does, particularly because of charter language limiting our ability to write MPD policy, this is an ordinance that applies broadly to the city enterprise. And so it is not only MPD employees, but it would also apply to employees in the city attorney's office and employees in any other department that might be considering deploying facial recognition as the technology expands. And so I think in many ways, and I think it's worth checking against the language that you suggested, Commissioner Sarah, we may in many ways have already covered this territory by suggesting that city employees can't use or acquire this technology. So I think that would probably apply at least to the prosecutor staff for the misdemeanor crimes that the city attorney's office manages. We're not legally able to restrict the behavior of the county attorney's office.
Great, thank you. And
Thank you.
reclaiming my time, I just have two questions that you might be able to answer. I'm also new to the intersectionality between the criminal justice system and facial recognition systems. But in case you do have the answers, do you know whether or not MPD have facial recognition systems already active? And then second, from my rough Googling, I have understanding that there are some systems that both record and do the analysis at the same time, and then there could be other more low budget ways of taking previously recorded material and doing the facial recognition analysis on that. Does your ordinance encompass both of those in its scope?
Both really good questions. Thank you. The ordinance does encompass both. And the accuracy issues, and particularly the racial bias issues that the coalition identified in their presentation, apply equally to both, which is why we're looking at that. I think this is one of those interesting things where if at a future date the technology got to a place where the reliability arguments fall away, then I think we're going to have a different set of ethical arguments about what kinds of surveillance do we want to be subjected to, and what does it mean for that data to be collected. But I think right now, actually, the reliability argument makes it a very easy decision to say this just doesn't work, and we need to not be relying on it. In answer to your question, part of the reason that we wanted to move on this in a timely way is that MPD doesn't currently own their own technology related to facial recognition. But what we are starting to see, the way that MPD currently uses facial recognition in a limited way is by borrowing the technology from the county. Sheriff Stanek, prior to Sheriff Hutchinson's election, had made some significant investments in technology. And so it's available there, and at times there's been collaboration where they've sort of borrowed the technology from the county. And so we wanted to look at that and place some restrictions before purchases were considered, so that we weren't going to have to claw something back. Many of the forms of technology that are currently used, that I think we probably are comfortable with, although there will be some disclosure about it in future surveillance technology processes that we'll work on setting up, are starting to offer facial recognition as an add-on feature, or as something that you can tack on. And so looking down the road, it's not very far down the road that we would start to see the technology be part of MPD's toolkit if we weren't to regulate it. And I think it's something that we see a reason to regulate.
Oh,
Thank
you for taking thank you for taking the leadership on this. We appreciate you coming and sharing it with us tonight. I have no further questions, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Pineau. Any other commissioners would like to make a comment or ask a question of CM Fletcher?
I would like to ask a question, if that's all right. This might have been something that you've envisioned already, but you mentioned that and I can imagine it'd be difficult to place restrictions on private parties using facial recognition. Is there any way, or has it been addressed, how police, law enforcement, maybe locally or other law enforcement agencies can access private companies or private businesses' facial recognition software? Would this be able to have any impact on MPD's use of that software if they were to buy it or have access to it in other ways?
Sim Fletcher, did you want to address that?
Yes, please. Yes, thank you for that. So yes, our scope as a municipality to regulate private use is somewhat limited. Portland is actually taking an interesting stab at this in places of public accommodation. So there's a rising trend, for example, in big box retail stores of scanning customers to create IDs. So even if you don't buy something, they can track that you came in and sort of monitor customer behavior in that way. And that's something that the city of Portland is attempting to regulate. And I think that'll probably face some court challenges and be an interesting thing to watch in the coming months. But I think it's something that we're interested in. In the meantime, the language that we're proposing would prevent city employees from acquiring that data and using it. And so it would prevent, for example, there's been some amount of collaboration, although I think this is actually stopped, but there was a growing collaboration with Ring doorbells for a while, where everybody had their doorbells taking video, and then there was access being provided to law enforcement in some municipalities. And so this is designed to prevent city staff from using facial recognition technology.
Okay, are there any further questions or comments for CM Fletcher?
Madam Chair, it's Casey. If there's not, I would suggest that the commission take a vote to receive and file this presentation, as there might be further discussion at some point on these proposals, and certainly this keeps it within the ongoing agenda of the PCOC to return to and discuss in the future.
Absolutely. Is there a motion for that, or do we just amicably agree?
If there's, I would suggest for ease that if there's no objection, you direct the clerk to receive and file that report.
Do we have any objections? Okay, clerk.
So directed, thank you.
Yes, so directed. Yes, thank you. Our next, no, are we still receiving public comments or no?
So now we're to the general public comment time, and so it would be time to invite forward comments from the general public. I believe we said there's a limitation of 3 minutes per speaker.
Yes. Do we have any of our community members that are joining us that would like to make a comment?
Hello, this is Dave. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Chuck Turchik. Welcome to the new members. You've already received a couple of emails from me, and I thank Commissioner McGuire for her reply to mine that I just received before the meeting. A second comment is that we in the public did not have access to that PowerPoint. This meeting is not on the City Council TV Channel 14 site, nor is it on YouTube yet. So we were unable to see the PowerPoint that was included in the presentation from Councilmember Fletcher. Third comment is, in May 14th of 2019, in the PCOC minutes, I made a comment, part of which was reflected in this way in the minutes. The third topic, and he was a little disappointed, was regarding the lessons learned from the Justine Damon trial. It was his hope that it would be an agenda item, specifically what role they, that means the PCOC, should play in determining the lessons learned from the trial and the settlement of the civil suit. And then at the end of that meeting, the PCOC chair, Andrea Brown, said, or the minutes say that she said, Chair Brown gave her final thoughts. Everyone needs to take time to process the Newer case in all its multiple facets. The verdict means a lot of things to a lot of different people. The investigation meant a lot of different things to different people. Chair Brown wants this topic as an agenda item in the future. And then on June 7th, Hennepin County District Court Judge Catherine Quaintance, when she sentenced Mohammed Noor, began her sentencing remarks with some questions that she got from the jurors, and then she said the jurors and the people of Minneapolis need and deserve answers. I immediately sent a transcript of those remarks to the PCOC, encouraging them to have this as an agenda item on their June meeting. But the June 11th meeting, they did not have that as an agenda item, and they have never had that as an agenda item. My comment at the June 11th meeting included the following. Again, I see there is nothing on your agenda this month about this case, even simply about what role, if any, the PCOC should play in helping to define what lessons might be learned from this case. The PCOC needs to become involved when cases are of such high profile and when there is all sorts of activity going on elsewhere, whether in city offices or in the community about it. So now I ask, what's the PCOC's role in these high-profile cases? In the past, it has been reluctant to do anything beyond having periods of meetings when the public could vent. And I think that was done only twice. And nothing came of those beyond the public comment sessions. So I am encouraged about item number 9 on your agenda that asks OPCR staff to conduct an after-action review that would go well beyond issues that might lead to criminal liability, which the BCA's investigation is geared towards. I'm not sure about this, but I think the police department does do force review or critical incident analyses or after-action reviews well before a BCA investigation is completed. Maybe there should be some civilian involvement in that process. Maybe someone from the OPCR or the PCOC, for example. There may be a few issues with the staff direction in item 9, though. First, the city attorney is going to be very reluctant about any city agency saying publicly what might have been improved in the handling of a high-profile incident that might lead to a civil lawsuit. Second, there may be data practices issues, just as there are when someone files a complaint against an officer with the OPCR. And third, the OPCR may tell you, or the MPD might tell the OPCR, that nothing can be released until the BCA investigation or even a subsequent trial or civil settlement is completed. I don't think that's true, but they might tell you that. Thank you very much.
Mr. Turchik, thank you for your comment.
You sure it's kind of red.
Next, we
Yeah,
have.
Madam President would be the next speaker, I suppose.
Next commenter.
Hello, this is Dave Bicking. I don't know if I'm next to be recognized here. Is that the case?
Yes.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Dave.
Okay, yes. This is Dave Bicking. I've worked for a long time with Communities United Against Police Brutality, or CUAPB for short. I want to welcome the new commissioners, and I thank you for volunteering for this work. I'll have to be kind of quick within the time limit here, but I'm glad to see that you're going to be getting a thorough orientation. But what's missing is an orientation by the community instead of just from city staff. And so CUAPB has always offered to do an orientation for new PCOC members. We're 20 years old. We were involved in the design and several redesigns of the Civilian Review Authority. I was a member of that authority for 2 years. We released a leaked document revealing a secret plan to scrap the CRA back in 2012 and to replace it with the OPCR. We opposed that plan. Frankly, we found that the results from the OPCR in terms of accountability were worse than we had imagined. We've supported the good work of the PCOC. There's been some very good policy work. And we've advocated for a greater influence of the PCOC within the city government. We get data from the city about the OPCR and complaint process and accountability and have analyzed that data. We have extensive knowledge of accountability. We've researched and made many policy recommendations. We have attended, I think, nearly every meeting of the CRA and PCOC for the last 12 years. So we have that knowledge, and we are happy to share all of that with you in an orientation of in the manner or however you would like to do that. Please, I hope you'll be the first group of PCOC members to take us up on this. I think it could be very valuable. I'm disappointed on today's agenda that there is no discussion about the PCOC having a special community meeting to discuss the killing of Dalal Eid last month. I know this was talked about before the meeting, and it goes along with Chuck's comments about how, this has not been done in the past. At this point, no one else in the city has proposed any such community meeting or method for input or a method for even determining what people would like to know about what happened that day. So I think the PCOC should be the ones to make sure that it happens. It fits your outreach mission, and I think it could provide valuable input and direction to the staff direction that's on your agenda, that the community needs the time to discuss this. So I'd like to see the PCOC discuss that further and hopefully implement such a community meeting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. The next caller is number ending 8793. Next commenter, number ending 8793.
This is Chuck Turchick. I'm 8793. I already made my comments, but thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I think we're a little out of order here then. Next caller would be number ending in 4121.
And this is Dave. 4121 was me. So
okay.
Thank you again.
Madam Chair, the list that's in the chat, if you're referring to that, is the list of callers. I'm not sure that everyone who's called in necessarily wishes to speak. They're just monitoring and listening in. So I think just asking generically if there's anyone on the call who wishes to address the commission tonight. And yep. And if there's not, then we can certainly close that public comment period and move forward.
Are there any other callers that would like to address the commission this evening?
I would like to address the commission, if you can hear me.
Yes.
Hi, I'm David. I work tangentially with Restore the Fourth Minnesota. I have a comment that is general to the subject of police oversight, but which connects with today's discussion of a facial recognition bill. This is the subject of parallel construction. Parallel construction is a practice among American police departments and national security entities, widely documented by Human Rights Watch, in which evidence that's normally supposed to be suppressed in a court case because of a Fourth Amendment violation in its collection or other illegality in its collection is admitted because a parallel route to discovering the same information is introduced in court. So with respect to Commissioner Sarah's request for the bill to include wording prohibiting bringing up information derived from facial recognition in court, I would say that unfortunately this is an invitation to parallel construction on the part of the MPD. And the wording in the draft of the bill that I've seen prohibiting the intentional use of facial recognition seems to be sufficient, because if facial recognition data is used unintentionally, then we would like the MPD to introduce it in court so that if it was actually derived from a violation of the statute, we would be able to suppress, the defendant would be able to suppress the evidence. So I'd like to encourage the commissioner to consider the original draft and not to introduce wording that would serve as an invitation to parallel construction on the part of the department. I yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments? Hello?
This is Afshin Farouzan. I'm the former member of the PCOC. And I just wanted to, I've been listening in, and I wanted to say thank you to all the commissioners who are on the commission now. I know I haven't met all of you. Some are very recent appointments, and I just want to say the work you do is important, and I think you'll do a great job. And I just wanted to give extra kudos to Interim Chair Jackson. You've done an excellent job in putting together this great agenda so far. And I think that, so far from what I've seen from you, you've demonstrated integrity and honesty that's really important in a chair and serving on this PCOC. So thank you all, and best of luck as you do this work going forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you, former Chair Afshin. I will do my best to make sure that your trust in me was well founded. Do we have any other comments from commissioners or from the public? Anyone else would like to speak? Okay, so if no one else, I'm going to make one more call. If no one else would like to speak, we're going to move on to our next order of business, which will be the elections. Okay, thank you to everyone who commented tonight. We appreciate your input. Consistent with our rules, we'll begin with the election of the chair, and then we'll handle the election of the vice chair. Any commissioner may nominate a member, including themselves, to be considered for election to either the chair or vice chair positions. Nominations do not require a second. After nominations have closed, each individual who has been nominated will be given a few minutes to explain why they would like to be considered for the position. When speeches have concluded, members may enter a question and answer period with the candidates before the vote is taken on the election of the officer. So we'll follow the same process for the election of the chair and for the vice chair. Are there any questions about this process as I've explained it? Okay, we will begin with the election of the chair. I will open the floor to nominations. Are there any nominations for the position of chair? Commissioner Abdi? Did you have your hand raised? I'm sorry.
I did, thank you. I was taking it off mute. I would like to nominate Commissioner Cynthia Jackson for chair.
Any other nominations?
Oh, and then I'm sorry, Commissioner Abdi, and I would also like to nominate myself for vice chair.
Okay, I think we'll get to that after the chair position has been voted on.
Perfect.
Are there any other nominations for chair? Okay, then do y'all need me to speak to why I would accept this nomination? Like that's up to you guys. Do you want me to?
The time is yours if you'd like it.
Well, I don't like being put on the spot and have to come up with something like right off the top of my head, but I believe that I'm passionate about this issue. I believe that I'm able to form very good relationships with both sides, that I am not polarized or entrenched in any one particular idea, that I'm always open to a new perspective, that I have excellent negotiation skills, that I listen very well, and that I have the heart of our community. Not the heart. See, that's why I don't like speaking publicly like this. I have the best interests of our community at heart. And I just believe with my leadership that we can forge this commission into a very effective tool to bring about and effect some real substantive change that I think we're all looking for. Does anybody have any questions for me? Okay, so I guess we're ready for a vote.
Yes, Madam Chair, and so the vote would be.
Sorry, do I call the roll for the vote?
Yeah, you'll direct the clerk to call the roll, and members will respond with an aye to support the election of Commissioner Jackson to be chair, or nay if that's the opposition, or abstain. So when the clerk calls your name, if you'll just answer one of those ways, then we'll be sure to conduct the election.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to our clerk, Carl. How should I address you? That sounds so funny to me. Like,
You can call me Casey. I appreciate it. That's my name.
Casey. I will turn the meeting over to Casey then to take the roll.
My colleague Jan will be doing that.
Okay.
Commissioner Jackson.
Aye.
Commissioner Abdi.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarah.
Aye.
Commissioner Crockett. Commissioner,
aye. Sorry.
Commissioner Jacobson. Commissioner McGuire.
Aye.
Commissioner Pino.
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks.
Aye.
Commissioner Sylvester.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
You guys, I'm going to be a silly old lady and get all emotional here. Thank you. Thank you for your confidence. And I vow to do my best to lead this commission. So we're going to follow the same exact procedure for the vice chair. And I'm going to open up the floor now for nominations. And I would like to nominate Commissioner Abdi for vice chair. Do I have any other nominations? Okay, then I'll turn it back over to you. I lost you. Yes, I'm sorry. I can't see your name.
Before you do that, Madam Chair, just if Commissioner Abdi wants to make some comments on behalf of herself to the group, and then if there are questions, that would be the bylaws would require us to go through that process first.
I knew that. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. Commissioner Abdi, would you like to address your nomination?
Yes, thank you. I do accept the nomination, and I'm really looking forward to working, just collaborating with the chair and just with the community. And yeah, thank you.
This is Commissioner Sarah, and I do. It's less of a question and more of an invitation. I think that it can be difficult to be a leader of a group that you were only sort of just getting to know and just starting to be, part of. And so I just want to offer that, I guess, Commissioner Pino and I are the senior members, and we haven't even been here that long, but I'm sure I speak for both of us in saying that we would be very happy to help in just kind of like the logistics and administering and finding your way through this. So congratulations on the nomination, and I think we're all here to support each other.
Yes, I echo the comments from Commissioner Sarah. Congratulations to you both, and I'm excited to see where your leadership takes this group.
Commissioner, thank you for your comments, Commissioners Sarah and Pinot. Commissioner Abdi, did you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, Commissioner, thank you.
Okay, then I will turn it back over to our to the clerk. Yes, to the clerk for the roll of the vote.
Commissioner Jackson.
Oh, aye.
Commissioner Abdi.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarah.
Aye.
Commissioner Crockett.
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobson. Commissioner McGuire.
Aye.
Commissioner Pino.
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks.
Aye.
Commissioner Sylvester.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
Congratulations, Commissioner Abdi, as our new vice chair. Thank you for being
Congratulations.
Yes. Let's see. I have to catch up here. It has been so long since I have had to follow Robert's rules of orders that I'm feeling like I'm really failing you all right now. So just be patient with me. I'll get better as this goes. All right, we have done that. All right, our next order of business. Am I correct, Casey? Are we moving on to the next order of business? Okay, thank you. This is our regular presentation of our case summaries and synopses, and I think we've all been provided with those materials. So the 3 cases to be presented were selected at the December meeting, and I will recognize the staff to make those presentations. So we'll take questions and open the floor to discussion after each of the case summaries is presented.
Madam Chair, I believe that Director Jafar was here, and with help from Mr. Hawkins, Director Jafar and Mr. Hawkins will present each of those cases. So welcome them to the meeting.
Yes. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Congratulations. Congratulations to Vice Chair Abdi. This is a really exciting moment. So I'm happy to be here. Usually in the past, what we've done is kind of just done a quick run through of the case summaries and then take your questions. The material we've provided to you is, as many of you know, limited by the Minnesota Data Practices Act. So we've pretty much given you what we can give you under state law. If there's things I can't answer, I'll have to let you know that too. But with that, we can kind of briefly go through each case summary. And then I would be happy, Chair Jackson, at your direction, if you'd like me to go through one and then take questions, a second and go through questions, a third and go through questions, or we can go through all 3 and take questions. So that is up to your discretion.
I would like input from the other commissioners. How would you like to do this? I don't want to just make a unilateral decision. Do you want to take comments after each summary, or do we want to wait until the end?
Madam Chair.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
But
I would prefer to take comment after each synopsis.
Commissioner Pinot?
I second.
You second that? Okay. If there's no objections.
And Madam Chair, I was just going to say that the technical crew does have the copies of these presentations, these summaries, and so we can certainly display those as Director Jafar goes through them. If that's helpful, we can have Ted, our tech support, provide. They are listed and linked from the agenda, but we can also display them here, Director, as you go through them. So Ted, if you can pull up the first one, which I believe was labeled number 18.
Yes, thank you, because I'm actually having some difficulties here tonight technology-wise. So yes, this works for me.
And that's actually helpful for me too, so I can keep my teams up instead of flipping back and forth through screens. So we'll start with this one. So in this case, it was a case involving property and evidence. You can see we put complaint processing. This case actually went all the way through the administrative process and was voted on by the review panel. We did actually, I wanted to point to a couple new things that we're providing you, because I know that you know, all of you are still in the learning phase about the policy and procedure. As a way for you to kind of get familiar with it, we're actually hyperlinking all of the policies that are listed in there to the MPD manual, so you kind of read as you go. We also tried to hyperlink any terms that might be unfamiliar. So in this one, you can see that there's also a listing of evidence. So you can scroll down. This one you'll notice was an internal notification. We get cases both externally and internally. Down here, there's a breakdown of each of the evidence that the investigator reviewed. So you can see that this one was a complaint about a victim who said they'd been sexually assaulted, and that the officer involved didn't include inventory critical evidence in that case. So that officer was interviewed. You can see in the evolved statement, they said they couldn't locate it, kind of couldn't remember. They would have inventoried it, like said they didn't inventory it, put that report together, put it forward to the panel. The review panel, as some of you may know, is a mix of, now it's inspectors and commanders of MPD, plus people who went through the same appointment process that you did, but just for the review panel, they voted merit. However, there's a next phase. Once that they vote merit, then that officer's entitled to something called a Loudermill hearing. There's a link in this case summary so you can read about Loudermill hearings. That after that Loudermill hearing and during that time, the evidence was actually located. It was filed under the incorrect case number, which is what was causing all the consternation. So they did find the evidence. It was inventoried. So that after that was sent to the chief, because the chief is the only one who can exact discipline, they ended up dismissing the case essentially against the officer after all those steps.
Okay, something jumps at, what, didn't the officer say that he had forgotten to list it into property? So how could it be in property if he didn't? Like, that sounds like a falsification of facts to me.
Lack of, how can I say this and still be within, this is the difficult part for me, honestly, because there's things I can say and can't say. What I would say, having read that entire interview of that case, is that it was more of a, I can't explain why this isn't here. Is the theme that I would say that you get the statement, is that they just didn't remember doing it. And so instead of just saying, I don't remember, said, I don't remember. And then, normally I would have done this, but for whatever reason, I guess I didn't because I can't find it. And so that's, I mean, when you look at the entire case file, that makes sense to me that the panel found merit on that. What happens after it leaves our office and goes into the Loudermill phase, we don't have any decision-making authority or authority on the file after that. Once it goes into that place, that is completely, that is where the line stops, and the rest of that is all in the disciplinary process per the chief. So I read the Loudermill summary in this case. We put in what we could, but kind of the point where it leaves my office to the chief is a part that our office isn't part of. I think Vice Chair Abdi saw a hand up.
Commissioner
Yes,
Abdi,
thank you.
Vice Chair Abdi.
Thank you. So I have a question. So this case that it was exonerated for the policy violation, but I guess I want to know more about the sense of urgency around that evidence, is because if it is a sexual assault, there is, and I think that I think we all understand that things happen and people are forgetful, but I think when it comes to that kind of evidence specifically, there's some urgency and responsibility, and the fact that it was marked wrong. So I don't know if dismissing it entirely is appropriate, but that's just because if they need to inventory by the end of their shift, that should just be common practice. And then if he just forgets, that's just, well, I shouldn't say he, but that's just where my thoughts are.
That's a really good comment. And I think, you'd probably have to have someone come from the police department to answer that question about how it got from that point to the decision they made in the end. I will note it's an internal referral, right? So somebody at some sense thought this is a problem, it needs to be referred for discipline. So, when we get those internal referrals, it's somebody flagging it. But yeah, I mean, for that's definitely, the chief's office or whoever's reviewing the discipline can certainly flag that and say, we're going to do something different with this part now that the course of this case has changed. But that's not what they decided to do. I mean, I think, the hard thing is if you see the whole Loudermill summary, it could change your opinion or not. But really that's at that point when they get to that hearing. And the purpose of that hearing, if you didn't click on the link, is the officer gets to just provide whatever they would like to say in addition to what's already happened before the disciplinary decision is enacted. And there's a panel of police leadership who will listen to that type of a summary. That then goes to the chief and the deputy chief of professional standards, who helps advise on discipline. They use all those materials to make decisions on discipline.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Commissioner Pinal, you had your hand up.
All right, for some reason, I apologize. I'm not seeing hands, so.
It's okay. It's
Commissioner Cano,
yeah, it's the little yellow hand icon in front of our names, if you can see it. But
No, I can't.
sorry.
So.
Director Jafar, thank you for walking us through these. It's kind of a question, kind of a comment, and you've already alluded to it in your summary a bit already, with saying that the ability for you to expand on this is limited in some capacity, which we all know is a frustrating thing on both ends. But just to make sure that we are all clear in why we're frustrated, to me, as someone who is just looking at this publicly available case summary, and this is my own editorialization, it looks like at the end of the day, the evidence was found and therefore there was no wrong that was done. And that, to me, is what is read into the reason why this individual was exonerated. And my own opinion of that is there was some sort of wrong being done, because the providing evidence into inventory was not properly followed. They got lucky at the end of the day that the evidence was found, but the reality was that some wrong, not as bad as the initial cause of it, but some wrong was caused. Is that a complete picture to your understanding of where things are at, or is there something that you have seen that the public is not able to see, unfortunately, that would provide more understanding as to what's going on here?
I can't really comment on that, but I think what I'll say is that just remember that, at the end of the day, no civilian oversight agency in the state of Minnesota and pretty much across the country gets to weigh in on disciplinary decisions of any kind. So even if a case changes course from when it leaves our office to when it's with the chief, we are prohibited by law from saying, hey, we think that there should have been something here. You should go back to training. You should do that because of the way the case is already set up. So you can see, I think, Vice Chair Abdi's question about, it looks like it changed from the time it left our office. I mean, from the way it read and what you can see in the summary, it looked pretty clear what was going on. The status of that case changed from the Loudermill, and that discretion is completely with the chief to decide what it is. But it is hard, and I don't want to comment on what the chief's decision was, or what the details of the materials are. That's just a place I can't go to. Remember, we also do have the city attorney on the call, Joel Fussy, who can answer any questions you have about talking in detail about those types of things. I understand it's completely frustrating, but it is the rules as they are now. Maybe at some point the legislature will change that, but for now, that is kind of how things work.
Okay, thank you for your understanding.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this is Commissioner Sarah, and I'm raising my hand.
Yeah, I see you, Commissioner Sarah.
So I just want to echo Commissioner Pino and Commissioner Abdi. So I have all of those concerns, and then just add a little bit onto that. I believe there is a way we can discuss data that's not public and still vindicate the open meeting law requirements and data practices requirements, which is kind of like a really complex mix. But the operating rules for the PCOC walk through a process wherein we can get data that is otherwise private. So perhaps it would be, in this case, some kind of Loudermill summary, or there was some piece of it, Director Jafar, that obviously you can't speak to in this space because this is public. But I believe we could receive that private data and review it. And then when we come to our public meeting, as we are here today, we could close it just long enough to discuss that private piece of the data, or private data rather. And then, and I believe someone would need to take minutes during that private session and then open it back up. That's, at least that's what the operating rules talk about. And that's also what kind of like case law around open meeting and data practices talk about. Could we explore something like that, particularly in this case where I think it seems like quite a few of us have a lot of concerns around this one.
So that's not a decision for me to make. You have two really good people on here who would be the ones to make those type of decisions. First would be Joel Fussy, who's the city attorney who works with the Police Conduct Oversight Commission, who works with data privacy rules. The other person to ask would be the city clerk, who's Casey Carl, as they both work, like their jobs are so much more focused on data privacy. We just follow the rules that are in the city. And so I would definitely defer to them for any of those discussions. And if that's something that, you know, as a group you want to vote on and, you know, take forward for discussion, I think reaching out to those entities would probably be the place to go.
Madam Chair, this is Joel Fussy from the City Attorney's Office, and if it would please the Chair and the Commission, I can certainly respond to that comment.
I was just getting ready to ask you to. Yes, could you make some comment on that and give us some direction there?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe what the data practices law holds is that the operative provision would be 13.05 of Minnesota statutes, which essentially states that there can't be any use or dissemination of private or confidential data on individuals unless it's limited to that necessary for the administration and management of programs specifically authorized by the local governing body. And the choice that, and the way that the Police Conduct Oversight Commission or OPCR ordinance is drafted is that there was a choice to specifically bifurcate the processes between the review panel and the Police Conduct Oversight Commission. When this body was kind of all encompassed in one in terms of what was called the CRA at that point, the commissioners themselves did the policy work and they also sat on the review panels. Under the ordinance that exists now, the review panels, which are made up of both sworn officers and civilian review panel members, they are specifically authorized with dealing with individual cases and individual facts and private data that might come about, private personal data in those disciplinary files. Specifically, the Police Conduct Oversight Commission, your authority is more general to policy determinations and specifically to reviewing summary and aggregate data, and you're not authorized to review private personnel data on individual cases. I think there was some reference to operating rules. I don't know what that document is. I do know that that language is just stock boilerplate language that comes from open meeting law and data practices law guidance, which essentially says that if there is an administrative body, a city council, a civil service commission, and they do have within their authority the ability to consider private personal data or private or confidential data on individuals, there are certain steps that they must take to be able to review that data or access that data or to consider it in their meeting. It does not create a blanket exemption for any body subject to the open meeting law or the Data Practices Act to review any sort of private personnel data. In this case, the operating ordinances that do not provide this body with the authority to review private personnel data, and Minnesota Statute 13.05 specifically would prohibit you from reviewing private data.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Jesse. Commissioner Sparks.
Thank you, and thank you, Joel, for that information. I appreciate it. Very detailed. I did have a follow-up question about that. I know that there's some concerns about private personnel data and so forth, but if that data were redacted in such a way, sort of how we do the case summaries here, where names, personal information, and stuff like that are removed, could it be used for review, or are we still outside of our scope here?
I guess I'll jump in on that as well. This is
yes,
City Attorney Fussy. It's kind of a general question. Certainly what the ordinance authorizes you to review is kind of summary and aggregate data, and that would specifically exclude any information that could be used as that would identify our particular case as opposed to just a type of case. I think essentially what's being done in these summaries is that kind of redactive type process to provide to equate just to the level of summary or aggregate data. And so that's essentially the level that this commission is authorized to review upon. And that feeds into the authority provision of, as I spoke to that bifurcation between the review panel and the Police Conduct Oversight Commission. The Oversight Commission, you guys are charged much more with policy work and looking at those sorts of things and not dealing with individual cases or the outcomes of individual cases, but kind of looking at, through this kind of audit work or summary data work, doing issue spotting, seeing areas that might be of concern as they relate not to individual cases, but to overall policies, practices, trends, and police procedures.
Okay, I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Chair Jackson here. I'm thinking that we all maybe see a problem with this particular case summary and the way that it was handled. I think Director Jafar, you had suggested bringing in someone from the MPD maybe to explain more about this process, about how this decision was, and I know they can't tell us everything, but a little bit more information might be helpful, because this conclusion, this outcome seems really problematic to me, that he says he didn't file it, and then just gives that as an excuse. Oh, I forgot. And then we find out that it actually has been filed, but it has the wrong case number on it. And this doesn't rise to the occasion of anything. Like it's just dismissed. I find that highly problematic. Vice Chair Abdi.
And yeah, I just want to piggyback on what you were just saying. And I think what is most concerning with this particular instance is that it was a sexual assault, and like that the victim would have been, I don't even have words on if they would, re-victimize, however you want to put it, on if that officer lost that. So to just brush it off and say, oh, no harm was done, it's okay. Like, I don't think that's good enough, because there was wrong that was still done. So that's just where I'm at.
So Chair and Vice Chair, if I could make a suggestion to you based on all of your comments, we could certainly reach out to Property and Evidence and someone in the professional standards and see if maybe for your next meeting we could have them come and they could answer some questions about like inventorying property and evidence, things are expected, and that way you can get some better information. And then come, if you'd like to revisit this in previous commissions, what they do is take a case that they had a problem with, especially at that level, and put it in what they called a queue to be something that they would want to address, like maybe as a bigger issue or even just individually. So that's some suggestions, but of course it's at your discretion what you'd like to do, but I'd certainly be willing to reach out to make those connections if that's something you'd be interested in learning more about.
Commissioner Sarah.
And one choice we also have as a commission is to escalate this to the mayor, who is of course in charge of the police department. And I see that Ms. Ritchie is on the call, for example. We could escalate this as a commission to the mayor and say, this is extremely concerning to us for all the reasons we've all just stated. And, I'm not going to close the book on the legal analysis, but let's just say for right now, we're not going to get any more data. And Mr. Mayor, you can access that data and look into this, and maybe this is one where you need to step in.
Okay, in the interest of time, because we do have 2 more case summaries to get to before we close this meeting, can we take a general consensus? Because I'm in agreement with you, Commissioner Sarah. Not only Director Jafar, would I like to have someone from evidence and like someone to explain what procedure an officer, give us more information, more complete information on what the procedure that they are expected to follow, and how that might sometimes not happen the way in which it's expected to. Like I completely understand human error, but not when we're talking about something as important as a sexual assault and the evidence against the perpetrator. So can we hold this until the very end, commissioners, and then decide what we want to do, whether we want to wait and get somebody in to say, more about this, or if we want to escalate, or if we want to reserve both those options. Can we do that? Is there any further discussion on this particular summary? Okay, then I suggest we move to the next.
Ted, this would be number 19. Thank you.
Okay, so this complaint was about a complainant not being able to get their house keys and documents. It was also alleged that the person didn't activate body-worn camera. You'll see that on some of these. They get added on just for your general information. Complainants don't typically realize that a body camera isn't on, but when we look for footage and we don't find it, we add it as a policy violation. So just so you're aware of that, that's why you'll see that kind of in a separate line item underneath usually, because that's added by us as an allegation. So basically they did an intake. It got reviewed for coaching for the body-worn camera, which is a pretty standard. If you don't have any other offenses with body-worn camera, you didn't turn it on for a small period of time and we can't find it, that's a typical, like, you have to go back to go through the protocols of body-worn camera. And then with the evidence, with the person having difficulty getting their evidence back, after reviewing the PIMS, with the PIMS stands for Police Information Management System. That's where the police reports are. The person was referred directly, like we referred the complaint itself with our own email and notification directly to Property and Evidence, having them get back in touch with the person. And then we also notify the complainant via letter. Like, here is the contact number and person you can talk to in Property and Evidence who's going to assist you with your claim to find your items. I can talk generally, a lot of these cases are kind of miscommunication and people just having trouble navigating the system to figure out where they need to call and contact to get their items back. So this person ended up getting sent to, like, getting connected with Property and Evidence, and then the officer was coached on when to turn on their body-worn camera.
I am having a very difficult time seeing this one. The other one I had up on my own desktop computer and I could scroll all the way up, but I can't see the bottom. I know that it says coaching, but I can't see. There we go. Thank you.
And you can see in this one, a policy violation was found on coaching once they went to the precinct, had to sit down with the supervisor, and then they end up going back all the way through the body-worn camera policy so they know when to turn it on.
Okay. While I'm digesting this, does any other commissioner have a comment or a question?
This is Commissioner Sarah. I do have my hand up, and I see that Commissioner Abdi also has her hand up.
Okay, I'm sorry, you guys. I cannot. So
yeah. So this is Commissioner Sarah. I have a question about the piece, like the evidence piece. Wouldn't it be appropriate for the joint supervisors or OPCR, whichever group is handling this, to look at if items were improperly seized in the first place? For example, if it was a search warrant for drugs and they seized a television set, I don't know, making something up, wouldn't that be the kind of complaint that OPCR or the joint supervisors or internal affairs would look at?
So in the intake investigation, the investigator looks for a lot of different things. I can't talk specifically to this one, but generally they look for all of those things. And just like the body-worn camera, any additional things that are found, including like things that would be under search and seizure policy, get put into that complaint as an extra item because we can add things as we see it. Body-worn camera is a development that allows us to see more, but you have to remember body-worn camera wasn't really fully rolled out and for us to be able to see all of it until 2017. So these, now you're in the modern cases here and now you can see everything. So in addition to looking at the PIMS report, both the public and non-public supplements that list all of these things and looking through all of the documentation of this, usually the intake investigator, if they do see something like that, they will add it onto the complaint, just like the body worn camera. It's oftentimes that things will be added that the complainant didn't actually complain about, but when we see a policy violation, we add it.
But I mean, didn't they complain about that?
No,
Like
what they complained about was that they just didn't have their items back. And that's we do get complaints like that. And a lot of times it's that they've asked for it when the evidence is being held, you know, for X number of reasons, but they need an explanation for that. And I think they've had trouble connecting with the right person. So a lot of times our job in these is to make sure that looking that the person, you know, inventoried it right, but then if it turns out they inventoried it right, getting the individual complainant connected with where they can get their property back if the property is able to be released. And then if it's not, making sure that they get an explanation that's clear for them about why it can't be released.
So
it said
the complainant alleged that the documents that were taken were not listed on the search warrant. Are we not going to address that? Was that not addressed?
It was reviewed and addressed. And so I can't like go into the details of it, but after reviewing and looking at what the complainant complained about and what was actually listed, the things that were found was that they may not have handled like the evidence where it was and where it needed to be tracked down. Like that piece needed to be connected, and a direct referral to the supervisor in the property unit to like connect with that person was what was made. But the policy violation, the one that was the policy violation, was actually the body worn camera.
Right.
And that's where it gets tricky, because like here's where the line of what the information I can give you. But what I can tell you is that everything is reviewed, the complainant's allegations are reviewed, and then the ones that are seen as like as like this is the correct allegation, like our civilian intake investigators spend a lot of time going through and attaching allegations on there. And so that is, you know, you're working on, a person will file a complaint, boil it down, figure out what are the allegations, and that's what's attached. I don't know if that makes sense, but they review a lot of different pieces of evidence to do that, including police reports, including the complaint, looking at any footage if it's available.
Vice Chair Abdi still had a question, Madam Chair. I'm sorry if you didn't see that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just would like that known. I cannot see when people are raising their hands. So unless you've got it like right here. Commissioner Abdi, I'm sorry. Vice Chair Abdi.
Thank you. So with this, I had some questions around just like the body worn camera policy in general. So I don't know if you're able to assist with that, but I thought that it was like unsettling that I saw the phrase "as soon as practical" mentioned like 10 times in that policy. So I'm curious from the other commissioners on if this is something that we want to look at further, because I think like when it comes to body worn cameras, or when it comes to anything really policing, as soon as practical, like what does that mean? And is there a lack of accountability there for officers to kind of do whatever they want when they want? So yeah, that's where my thoughts are.
Yeah, I would think that as soon as practical would be defined as when you answer the call, when you actually arrive.
Actually, Chair Jackson, Vice Chair Abdi, I mean, typically when when they're going on the call before the interaction happens, they're supposed to have the body camera on. When they haven't turned on a body camera and it doesn't capture a critical interaction, that goes on as a violation of the policy, because they're absolutely, if you're, you can imagine, right, if you're walking up to someone, that camera needs to go on. There's also a 30-second buffer too. So when you turn it on, it's not going to have audio for 30 seconds. And so that's very important. And those are watched closely. And that's why you've probably noticed, even though you've had minimal case summaries at this point, there are body worn camera allegations attached to quite a few of them. And going through that policy again is really important to make sure that people turn on the camera when they're supposed to. And it was actually the PCOC, if you're not aware.
I see you, Commissioner Pinnell.
Yeah, if you're not aware, it was the PCOC that made really good recommendations that our office drafted on the initial drafts of the body-worn camera policy. The policy, the way you see it now, has gone through several iterations, but the version that it's in now is actually reflects a lot of the PCOC's initial recommendations from several years ago, which was to turn on the camera most of the time.
Officers are aware of this 30-second lag, correct?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
And why is it,
Commissioner,
I mean, when you
Commissioner
start,
Abdi, Commissioner Pinnell had his hand up. Go ahead.
Yes,
Commissioner Pinnell.
Director Jafar, you and I have talked technical difficulties with body cameras in the past year. And so it's not a surprise that we're seeing more of them, as you mentioned. Is there any new update on battery life since we're talking about technical issues with body-worn cameras? I can imagine some versions of said cameras don't last that long, depending on the situation and how new they are, but some of them may last, hours upon hours, a whole shift, maybe more. Just so that way people are who are new and haven't had a chance yet to read the reports that are made by the PCOC. Can you give us like just a general sense of either major issues or things that are pretty reliable, include or don't include battery life, turning
I would
things
say
on,
that
stuff
like it's, we found one issue that was a docking issue at one of the precincts that was like caught quickly because there was a pattern of like one day a camera and we caught it and it got corrected, which is, one of the values of having civilian oversight, right? They did get updated cameras not that long ago. There's a unit in MPD called the Business Technology Unit, and they're kind of the ones that would have answers for you about technical things about the body cameras. They're the ones that come and offer training for us when there's new body cameras. I would say generally, it's been an interesting trajectory because I've been here since body cameras were rolled out. In the beginning, it was a lot of people just forgetting that they were wearing them and not turning them on, which all went to, they were getting investigated or getting coached, whatever. And so that quickly went into people just not turning it on fast enough. And I would say anecdotally, I've seen a lot less of that. Like a lot of the cases that we watch have the appropriate body camera. The challenge is that you've got so many officers wearing them. For us is that you're watching all the angles to make sure you're getting the right thing. So that's a good problem to have rather than not having camera. But we do pay it close attention where if you're turning it on 30 seconds too late or a minute late into an interaction where by the time I can hear it, you're already talking to each other. That's not what we want. We want that, audio starting before you start a conversation with someone. And so I think that's, you're seeing some of that. I haven't seen a lot of technical problems with the cameras though. We are finding the footage that we need. It's just a lot of footage.
That's great. And since you brought it up, there have been moments in the past where not only OPCR, but also PCOC have gotten to go witness a training session of some sort. And I assume, although I have not been a part of them since going virtual, to departments such as the one that you mentioned there. Do you think that's something, I mean, again, you don't control that division of MPD, but do you believe from your perspective that that's something that's possible to do virtually, that we could have a training of ourselves, get a better understanding of that scenario?
I'm working with MPD about virtual training options because where we in the real world right now, I have always offered the trainings that we go to staff for both the PCOC and the review panelists because I think it's really important for you to get firsthand to see what is being trained so that you can be better informed and then let that give you ideas, about what you want to work on. It's been a little tough with COVID, and I think it's not a secret that there have been several cases of COVID in the police department. So, even we haven't gone to our normal in-service and the things we do go to. But I am trying to work on some things that we can get virtually for all of us, actually, because I don't want our training to fall off just because of the pandemic. So yeah, we're working on some opportunities, hopefully. And I hope in the meantime, while we're trying to troubleshoot it, having presenters come to talk to you about the areas that you want to learn more about is another way to do training that in this difficult environment is a good thing we could plan for right now. But I am trying to get some other options for you.
Thank you for your encouragement on that.
Commissioner Sarah had a question, Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, you did. Yes, Commissioner Sarah.
Thank you. This is for probably Director Jafar. I was looking at the discipline matrix, and there aren't any specific call-outs for body-worn camera violations on the matrix, but there are specific call-outs for MVR, which that's the dash cam video. Right?
Mobile video recording is what that stands for. Yep.
Things. So that was kind of the standard technology before body-worn cameras were so prevalent, right? So
it still is something that we use in view now, but yes, it is still there.
Okay, so the reason I just took the time to go through that is because since there isn't a specific call out for body worn camera, I tried to see if there's like something like it, and there are specific call outs for violations of the MVR or motor vehicle recording.
Mobile vehicle recording.
Yeah. Okay. And so on the discipline matrix, if the officer does not turn on their MVR, that is a B level violation that gets, according to the matrix, a written warning or written something. So that seemed like the most analogous, problem to what we're seeing in this case. Why was this not a B level?
So I think you've got the outdated, like the chief has redone the discipline matrix. So that may need to be another conversation that we have. And they've taken out the like A through D. So that's something of the past. But a good place where you can find historically, if it's still up, and I'm checking right now while I'm talking, is it's actually not the discipline matrix. If you pull open each policy, it'll give you a range. So some policies are A through D, some policies are B through D, some policies are just a D. So that range is what you should be paying attention to in the policy and procedure sheet. And I can put that in the chat if you want to see where the web page is to look at all the policy and procedure. And like I mentioned before, I've got it hyperlinked for each one of the ones that you're looking at. So you can go individually into each policy and take a look at what is the bracketing there. So for example, if it's an A through D, that might, depending on the severity. Now, for example, and this is where, it's like the discretionary piece. So for example, if it's a really serious incident that wasn't captured on body camera, that may be construed as a higher level, right? And so it depends, but for something where maybe I am trying to get this in the chat here so you can see it while I'm talking. If it's something that is, your camera activated 10 seconds late, you haven't had any body worn camera violations, then you might be in an A. So it just kind of depends on the situation as the answer, but I put the policy link in the chat so you can go policy by policy and you can see that bracket. Because I think in the old discipline matrix, it might be confusing to look at, but I think when you go in the policies individually and look at the range, that's a better indicator of how this works.
So can we get the up-to-date matrix then?
Yep, I will get that. So that I'm going to contact the police department to get someone to send it because I'm always really careful about things that aren't my data. So I want to make sure that they send it to me, knowing that I'm sending it to you or whoever we're going to have facilitate that. But we will get you the updated matrix. But in the meantime, I really would encourage you to look at the policy because it's got those ranges under each one.
Yeah. And I saw the A to D and I thought,
yep.
Well, if A is the coaching thing that's supposedly not public, so virtually everything in the whole manual, I went through all of it, virtually everything is a range of A through D. So basically that's saying to the chief, if you don't want this public, just call it coaching.
I think you would need to talk to someone about the police from the police department about that. In our world, so this officer that's involved in this incident, if they come back with another body worn camera violation within 1 year, they immediately go into an investigation. They don't have the option to be sent to coaching anymore on our end because they're out of that now. They get one chance and then they're out.
How would you know? Because if it's coaching, it's not saved in the personnel.
Well, we have
right?
We have our own database of all the cases, so we do a manual search of that person and make sure that they did not have a same or similar within a year. We literally look at their whole record before we make the decision, and so that's how we know. But it has to be same or similar within a year.
And can you see internal as well?
Yes. Yep. So all our stuff is internal. We're all background. Our entire staff is MPD background checked. So we went through the same background check that the police go through. Have to do the confidential law enforcement data, like examine the CGIS test to do that. So we're all cleared so that we can look at all of those things. That there's also internal dashboards built so that you can quickly look up someone's discipline to make sure that they don't have same or similar within a year.
Wait, public dashboard or your dashboard?
Our internal, yeah. None
Okay,
of that
sorry,
information
okay,
is public.
right.
So we
That's-
have a
that's
lot of,
what I-
yeah, no, I got you. Yeah, so that there's a lot of tools internally for us to double check and make sure.
Well, that's something that I am I'm concerned with, that we don't know the exact numbers of officers who have been either disciplined or coached for the same issues within a year. Without violating the Data Privacy Acts, how would we be given a list of how many officers, for which infraction, and how many repeat episodes they've had in 12 months? Is there any way that you could provide us with that?
I mean, that's not, again, that's not a call that I would make. I'd probably defer to the city attorney's office and to Joel to talk about that, or the city clerk's office. Like those aren't our decisions to make.
Are you still here, Joel? I think he left, didn't he? Okay, well then I would like to.
Mr. Fussy's still on the call. He might just be away from the phone at a moment.
Well, Casey, could you set that up for us to reach out and ask him if he could?
Hello, I
explain
am on the call.
of how we could get that information, or why we wouldn't be able to have it?
Sure, and Mr. Fussy is on the call and he can respond.
Okay.
What was the request again? I'm sorry, I'm dealing with some
Mr.
small.
Fussy, what they're asking is there's a question about the ability to ascertain the number of officers who may or may not have received discipline over the course of a year in a way that would allow, through some type of summarization of data without violating the Data Practices Act, so that the commission, in exercising its oversight capacity, is able to determine to its satisfaction that the status of officers in terms of discipline, which may then lead to an infraction that would merit some type of discipline or come before this group in a summary format. So is there a way, without violating privacy provisions under the Data Practices Act, to create some type of tracking list for the PCOC's reference?
Sure, that's something we could look at. It's entirely, that's too complicated for me to answer at this point, but we could certainly look at it. I will say the general proposition would remain that this half of the OPCR, this Police Conduct Oversight Commission, does not have any authority to access private personnel data beyond that of the general public and beyond that summary and aggregate data. But to the extent that request could fit within those parameters, we could certainly look at it.
And Madam Chair, if I might just interrupt for a moment, I was going to add on to Mr. Fussy and say, this is an area where I think the attorney's office and the clerk, in terms of being responsible authority for the city, could certainly look into that a bit and give you an answer. As Mr. Fussy said, it's difficult. The Data Practices Law is a very comprehensive and very difficult law to understand. I will go on record saying it's the worst in the United States. Our state has the worst data practices law. And so it's very difficult, and it changes every single year. The legislature makes changes to it every single year. So as the city's responsible authority, I can sympathize with the position you find yourself in. And I think probably between now and your next meeting, Mr. Fussy and I could look at that and possibly come up with a little bit more detailed analysis of what is and is not available under that statute, what is and could be made available, and what cannot be made available. I know many of the members are new, and so this would be something we could bring forward as that sort of level set expectation of this is the reality of the Data Practices Law, and here are opportunities where we can work within that law, and then here are hard stops that we can't.
Okay, so what I'm asking, though, I don't think would involve any personal data of the officers. What I'm asking would be for a compilation of the violations that were sent to coaching, and if there are repeat officers that have been sent to coaching within the past year, and how many officers have, how many coachings does each officer have? Like, I don't think we need to know the names or any other private data. It's just, I would like to see, I would like to see the level to which incidents are rising to this, like, coaching, and then how many is each precinct experiencing as opposed to other things.
I
Andrew.
second that, Madam Chair.
So I think, as I mentioned, Madam Chair, that's while I appreciate that sounds
Okay,
like an easy
Casey,
task.
I've recognized Andrew. Just one second.
Sorry, everybody, Papa. I have two infants that I've been putting to bed, and it's been a nightmare. But I'm here. What you're describing is actually it's already been requested upon us from the PCOC. There's a coaching study. We had a previous coaching study where we looked at officers, the recidivism that happens, and so we can see officers, that throughout time, we can see how many words were in the coaching documents. What I want to do is to repeat those studies, and then basically extrapolate it to where we're at right now, so that you'll have the opportunity to see. And again, my goal is not that it's good or bad. My goal is to show you the data, and then you do it with what you want. So that is in the process. It's been a lot. We've had staff shortages. You're all aware. But we do have people that are here that are doing the work. And so the study that you can find on our website right now, everybody can go to it. Go to the PCOC website. There's a coaching study. You can go to the you can see what that looks like. We're trying to get that to go from that point to now. And so you'll be able to encompass all of that data. So I hope that's again, that's not an answer. That's not. I'm not telling you that that's enough, but that is something that's taking place right now. That is relevant to this conversation that I want to make sure everybody knows about. So, sorry to interject. I just want to make sure it was clear.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you, because that's exactly what I was
You're welcome.
asking. Okay, Casey, you did not finish what you were saying. Did you want to follow up with that?
Mr. Hawkins has a better answer.
Okay. Do we have time? We have 10 minutes. Do we want to go to the third summary, or do we want to decide right now whether we want to escalate this to the mayor's office, the first summary, or if we want to have some further information from MPD, from oh my gosh, I hate it when my words just desert me. I can't speak well at the moment, but
Chair Jackson, I also threw in the chat for you. If you're trying to get to the studies, I threw in the chat so you could click on it if anybody needed quick access.
Okay, Commissioner Pinot, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I request that in regards to case summary 18-20737, that we engage with, help me with the appropriate entity over at MPD, Director Jafar. The entity that
evidence.
Evidence.
Property and evidence, is that right?
Evidence, yeah, right.
Property and evidence. That's what I was looking for.
That's
Thank
the
you
one.
very much. That we reach out to property and evidence to have someone from their division come and meet with us in a public setting, so that way we can potentially get a little bit more illumination on that case. And then I would humbly suggest after that discussion, once hopefully we have a little bit more information, if necessary, we can talk to the mayor or other entities afterwards.
Yes. I agree with you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sarah?
Is that, given that this was a complaint and it's now been exonerated and all that, is the person from evidence going to be able to tell us anything about this case? Because I think our questions are sort of like, what the heck happened here, right?
I'm assuming that was directed towards my motion, so I'll just elaborate by saying what I gathered from Director Jafar was that she was unable, due to her own legal limitations, to be able to share with us information that potentially someone within Minneapolis Police Department would be able to share with us in a public setting.
Can
Is
I
that
clarify
incorrect?
that? That's,
Yes, please.
I don't think anybody is going to be able to comment directly on the case, but what you can do is if you want to ask them in sex crime cases, could you walk through general inventory?
Generalities.
Could you walk me through? Like, there's a lot of information to be gleaned that way. I know the Data Practices Act is difficult. I find it difficult myself. I completely agree with the city clerk. I just wrote an article on this whole thing. So I'm with you, okay? But like, you have to look at what can you get out of this, right? And so if you ask general questions to learn about the process, then when you see cases that come up that have something that looks like it deviates from the process, you'll understand that better. You know, the other thing to keep in mind with the case summaries while you figure out what you can and can't do, past commissions have taken those case summaries to find trends, to find things that they'd like to work on, projects that they think, something that they think is problematic. So don't forget that high level view. The nice thing about having more of them over time, and I know that many of you are very new and, you know, this is your first meeting for some of you, but you have to pay attention to the trends over time. That is what helps guide and inform your work. It's great to ask these questions. It's great to have intellectual discussion, but don't lose that piece that you're trying to look at things over time so that you can see this is the thing that I would like to work on changing. This is the thing that I would like to identify. And you have some data, you have some pieces behind you, even if they're not as complete as you'd like them to be.
Okay, well, first of all, I would second your motion, Commissioner Pinot. So Director Jafar, if you could reach out to Property and Evidence and have someone come and speak to us.
Yes.
Because I know that we're trying to find patterns, you know, that we can identify and make suggestions about changing some policies. But this particular case, for some reason, is very problematic to me. That an officer is just allowed to say, "Oh, I forgot. It's no big deal," and that the department accepts that. So, you know, I don't know if we'll discover a trend here, if this fits a pattern of evidence being entered in properly. But it will behoove us to speak to someone at least and get more information on the procedures and maybe percentages of how often their procedures are not followed. They may have some information on that too, and not necessarily the outcomes of those, but like how common is it? If it's common, you know what I'm saying. So any further comment on this one? Do we want to move to the next one? I guess we need to, don't we? Unless, I mean, have we all read it? The accident?
Before you move on, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, we had a motion on the floor, and I do need to have a roll call for that.
We need to vote,
Yep.
don't we?
And so we have an official act of the commission. Yep.
Yep. So I will turn it over to Casey and vote on that. So the motion is to invite someone from MPD, Property and Evidence, to come and address the commission. So the motion's been seconded, and now we'll take a vote.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Abdi,
Aye.
Commissioner Sarah,
Aye.
Commissioner Crockett,
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobson, Commissioner McGuire,
Aye.
Commissioner Pino,
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks,
Aye.
Commissioner Sylvester.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
Motion is carried. So Director Jafar, if you could reach out to the MPD and have someone get back with us about that. And that for next month's meeting, for February's meeting. So,
Madam Chair, that would be for the March meeting, I believe.
March
We had a
meeting.
proposal.
Yep, I'm sorry, the March meeting. So our last summary.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Heidi has a question. I didn't catch the last name.
Hi, Heidi
Richie.
Ritchie from the mayor's office. I just want to be included in the communications around those cases.
I'm not sure what the procedure is here. I mean, can someone direct me?
So, Madam Chair, those communications will come back at the March meeting of this body. So Ms.
Okay.
Heidi certainly is able to attend that meeting, just like this one, where that information will be presented.
Okay. Thank you, Casey.
Thank you.
Chair Jackson, I apologize. My team stopped working. I think it's ready to be done for the day. But yes, I did hear you. We will have someone from staff reach out to property and evidence, and we'll set that on as a presentation for your next meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. So our next summary, where's the number? 20. Well, you do this, not me, right?
Yeah, so basically it was the officers were involved in conducting a traffic stop. They collided with an oncoming vehicle. They were basically going through an alleyway. There's a description here. I don't think I need to go through this because you've all read it. So basically there was some minimal damage, but the car remained operational. Typically when squad accidents are viewed, we do pay attention to the level of damage sustained. Was anybody hurt? That's a big factor. So looking at that, again, this is listed as property damage. We get referrals. I can't remember if you scroll up if this one was a referral from the squad accident committee, and I can explain what that is because you're very likely to see a lot more of those cases because we just get a lot of them every year. Basically, whenever there's a squad accident, it goes to a committee for review, and if they think the accident was preventable, then it gets routed to our office to review that accident to see what should happen. This officer the accident was basically a low level. Thankfully, nobody was hurt and there was no serious damage to the vehicles. But we believe that the officer should have to sit down with the supervisor and go through what they did in that thing, what could have been preventable, and go through the 4-410, which is city vehicles and on-duty accidents. So that they did, a policy violation was found that the accident was preventable, and they were coached if that officer was to get another accident within a year period, then that would turn into an investigation. Other cases we've had that have turned into investigation, the officer has to actually go back through emergency driving training again, or go back through trainings again to make sure that they're driving safely.
Okay. Well, reading through the summary of evidence, the pilot officer with emergency lights activated followed the same course and exited the alley by driving around the school bus. I'm trying to interpose myself into that same situation, and I think this officer acted normally. Like I agree with the outcome that he should have just been coached. If he had his lights on, he obviously was not speeding down the alley because there was a bus there, so I'm sure he was going very slowly. And made a decision to follow the car that he was following around the end of the bus. So I actually think it was the citizen who wasn't paying attention. So I'm satisfied with this outcome. Any other commissioners, anybody else?
I tend to agree. That's what it sounds like to me too.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a lot more straightforward than the other ones that we've been seeing.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I think so too. And plus, I mean, it looks like everything was followed according to proper procedure. That the traffic unit filed it, that the squad vehicle, or I'm sorry, I lost my place. A traffic squad and a supervisor both came to the scene in a state accident report. I'm satisfied. I don't have an issue with this.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Sarah has a question.
Commissioner Sarah.
I was trying to mute. I hit the hand. I'm sorry. I don't know how to unhand my.
Oh, okay. Well, at least you can see the hand. I can't. I'm using a different computer though, so I don't know. It's probably an outdated version of Teams, maybe. So do anyone else here have a differing perception, or are we all in agreement? We can.
Just to echo my earlier comments, I think the individual case sounds fine. I do have sort of a keen interest in the number and the type of traffic violations. I feel like I personally, anecdotally observe a lot of these kinds of things on the part of MPD. So I'm interested in seeing these in aggregate and learning more about them. And I thought it was interesting that Director Jafar noted that they see a lot of these type of complaints. I can imagine, being that police officers practically live and work out of their vehicles, there would be a lot of complaints, but I have a keen interest in these myself, and seeing more of these big picture would be something I'm looking forward to.
Commissioner Sparks, that's the type of case where like we do, because every squad accident that's happened is reported out and then reviewed. So there's no shortage of data when it comes to squad accidents. Like a lot of them are more minor accidents, but it's still really important to review them to make sure, even on this one, like, I think you've all said like, yeah, this looks pretty reasonable, but and looking at it, you can see we still sent them to coaching for it to be reviewed because, make sure you're paying attention when you're turning around a bus. It's really important. You could hurt someone, so even though those seem like they're definitely not as attention grabbing as some of the other things, that's a lot more of our day-to-day work, and it still really impacts the quality of life for people.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. If we have no further questions, comments about the summaries, we'll move to our final item of business tonight. And that is a proposed orientation program that would substitute for the commission's regular meeting in February.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
Madam
sir.
Chair. It's Casey. I'm sorry to redirect your attention. You do have one item. You have both the selection of 3 case synopses for the March meeting. Number 9 is the potential staff direction that you had submitted with the agenda, and then the February orientation. I'm sorry to have to pull us back, but there are 3 items remaining.
No, that's fine. I'm trying to work off of 3 different computers here, so I forgot that we have to follow the agenda. That's the main thing. Okay, let me pull that back up.
And I'm not sure, Mr. Hawkins can probably help us here, or perhaps Director Jafar. I'm not sure how selection of the next 3 case synopses is made. I haven't been part of that process before. So the agenda item now is picking case synopses to be presented at the March regular meeting. And Ted has pulled up for us the view of those case synopses July 2020. So they're in front of the screen if you'd like to review those. And I see that Director Jafar is asking for recognition.
Director Jafar.
Chair Jackson, if you want some, because I know even for the newer commissioners, there was a time when it was suspended. So I thought it might just be helpful for everybody to go through how they've done them in the past. Again, at your discretion, if you want to keep doing them. Usually everybody's read the summaries in advance. Everybody makes a selection of 3. So then the vote is tallied as you call on each commissioner to vote. You also put your own vote in for the 3 cases that you would like more information on. The 3 cases that garner the most votes are the ones that are then done in the bigger format where you get more information.
Okay, this document is actually that we've already chosen summaries from this document. Do we have a current one where we're choosing summaries for?
You do.
Point of inquiry, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'm looking at new business section 8, where we're saying selection of 3 case synopses. I'm unfortunately not seeing a link in LIMS where I would normally get this information ahead of time, and therefore I don't actually have a list of these 10 synopses. Is it
I
possible?
don't either.
Yeah, is it possible for the clerk or someone to provide both us and the public with said document?
This is where the clerk will have to rely on Mr. Hawkins. I do not have anything for that agenda item. I'm sorry.
Just a minute.
I also wanted to bring something up as well, that I don't think that it gives us enough time actually to look at these synopses and choose 3 that when we're only presented with them at this meeting, and then we have to quickly choose 3 to summarize in the next meeting. Is there any way that we can receive these a few days prior so that we can look at them and then come back to the meeting with a better idea? I mean,
So, Madam Chair, perhaps
Yes.
while Mr. Hawkins looks to do that, something we could do is move on to the next item of business, which is the staff directive. We can always come back to this item and pick case selections. I was hopeful to make comments when we talk about the orientation in February that might address that. As I mentioned, the clerk's office is new to assume responsibility for meeting management functions. This is our first meeting. And so I think a lot of those opportunities for process improvements are certainly right before all of us. I'm learning as all of you are learning. And so to the extent that we can make those types of process improvements, I absolutely support them. But perhaps in the interest of time, we can move to item number 9, and then we can come back to number 8.
Well, if we'd like to finalize 8 right now, I would like to include the case synopses into the same processes as when we receive the agenda. We always get a prior look at that before it's posted. If the synopses can be included with that, if we can just move forward with that. So the item number 9.
Ted, can you pull up
motion?
Can you pull up the staff directive that I sent to you, Mr. Arbiter? And then, Madam Chair, as a reminder, item number 9 is a potential staff direction that you've authored. This relates to the December 30th officer-involved shooting. It specifically directs staff to do, I believe, what's called within your bylaws a research program, and to bring back verified facts and data about that situation, and to provide a summary analysis of that so that you can then, in your oversight capacity, examine what, if any, policies or procedures were involved, where there may have been any lack of a significant policy or procedure in place, and direct further opportunities from that regard. So this is item number 9 and would be before the commission to discuss.
Okay, I'm searching my email. I don't know what my problem is tonight, or my computers, actually. That everything is lagging, everything is very slow. I'm trying to pull that up.
Do you see it on the screen in front of you in the Teams environment? And Mr. Arbiter, perhaps you can increase
yes, I
the
see it
size
now,
of that.
Yes.
And at the risk of, decorum, you're doing great. And I've, been a part of worse meetings. So keep going.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I impose ridiculous expectations of perfection on myself. So when I
think we all
I
do.
know it's not right.
It's like
I should not
8:30.
treat myself that way. So let's just talk about this staff direction. I'm sorry, Vice Chair Abdi.
No questions, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Director Jafar has requested recognition.
Director Jafar, please.
Before you get too far down this, I think there's some important information you need to know here. Our office has never been involved in officer-involved shootings. That may be surprising to some people. We've been in discussions about how we can be involved in reviewing things, but to this point, and we're in the discussions right now, we almost had an agreement, and then all of the leadership and MPD changed and we had to start all over again. The BCA gets the officer involved shooting. They make a report and determination that often gets referred to a charging authority. When it comes back to the Minneapolis Police Department, it usually goes to IA, Internal Affairs, for a force review on the incident. I'm not going to take an opinion on what way I think we should go because we're still in the discussions, but our office has never been involved in doing anything like you're requesting. And I just want to make sure you know that before you move forward on it. And we would have to, if you move the staff direction forward, we would have to hammer that out with MPD about moving forward on officer involved shooting cases, because that is not something that we have done in the past.
Andrew, could we have a word from you on this?
Yep. Sorry about that. To this, I think the clerk's office can actually speak to quite a bit of it because as our public information official, they are the ones that are situated to release all this stuff to the public. And like, Casey, do you have anything?
As
Madam
I go
Chair.
forward, I'll learn more about you guys' responsibilities, but Casey,
Madam
please.
Chair, I would only suggest that to Director Jafar's point, as it says in the last line of the opening provision, it says based on facts and evidence. So my assumption would be that after the evidence is weighed, after facts are determined and verified, which is the important point here, then there would be an analysis of that factual data sufficient to provide an analysis of what was the incident as determined by that research, that investigation, not necessarily done by the OPCR. But then afterwards, sort of as an aftermath analysis, there would be this, were there police department policies and procedures involved in that incident where those policies or procedures may not have been followed, where there may have been some discrepancy? If so, then those could be identified and brought back to this group. So certainly this is not something I think that the expectation is that OPCR undertakes its own investigation, but certainly after the facts have been determined and ascertained, there is an opportunity, I think, for the OPCR to work with police, BCA, and other agencies as those facts are known to evaluate sort of as a post-audit almost. What policies were involved and were there any violations of those policies? What procedures were involved and were there any infractions on those procedures? And then those can be brought forward and shared with this body in an oversight capacity so that this body then can say, okay, we have now found some vulnerabilities in that safety net, if you will, that net of policies and procedures. And what do we, the oversight body, want to take at that point in terms of direction going forward with recommendations on how those policies and procedures can be strengthened. So that would be, I think, a more fuller explanation of the intent behind that staff direction is certainly to, after the facts have been ascertained, bring forward that information to this body where the policies and procedures were perhaps insufficient or failed to be observed in their fullest capacity, so that this body could, I think as Director Jafar rightly said, ascertain that baseline and say, okay, well, these were the policies, so what do we do now?
Well, I think that we're concerned with the public being able to comment on this, but it was my decision to delay opening it up to public comment until after we have more information, till things, all the facts and things have been concluded. So I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, I said about the public commenting on it. I think I think it's just more respectful and more of a complete process to have more knowledge about the incident before we have the community, the public, weighing in. We need to give them something to weigh in on rather than just immediate perceptions of what happened. I mean, that wasn't relevant to moving anything forward. It was just a sentiment that I wanted to express. So, all right, I have to figure out which computer I have the agenda up on. Help me, Casey. Do I need to make a motion to accept this?
Madam Chair, this motion is brought forward by you. We would just open it up for discussion if there's any discussion or clarification beyond what we've already had. And then, of course, we would need a vote.
A second, yeah, and a vote. Doesn't it need to be seconded or not?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Do we want to discuss or can I get a second? I think I need a second before we move it forward for discussion, actually.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair. So, thoughts, questions?
If I may, well, it sounds like we're uncertain on the timing, but hopefully this is still the right request. Director Jafar, to your office is one question. Is this something then that your office will be able to access and answer? I think that's what I was gathering from what you were saying, Casey. Is that right? I just would like to, I think this envisions it, but I would like to kind of say that I want to make sure that when we're talking about the incident, that this includes collateral issues that happened not just on the date. I just don't want the scope of this to be narrowed to that day and time. I want to make sure that that is clear, and that maybe one thing we want to include in point 2 is bringing in who can answer questions before the commission, because based on other summaries we've gotten tonight, it sounds like we're also not going to get, there's going to be a lot of private data. And so I want to make sure that maybe we can talk to someone who can talk about general processes to help kind of help us understand a little more about what should have been done, and that might not all be, might not all come through because of the Data Practices Act.
I think I understand the intent of the clarification around the staff direction as drafted. I would leave to Director Jafar any answer in terms of her office's lead on doing any kind of research.
Thank you, Commissioner McGuire, for that insight there. But I would also like to ask or clarify that when we receive all the information, that it includes the reasons for the investigation in the first place, like what led up to this. And I also think that the handling of the search warrant at his parents' home should be addressed as well in this. Director Jafar or whomever will be handling this. If I could ask those two things.
I'm probably going to have to talk to both the police department and MPD records, because like I mentioned before, this is just not something we've ever done. We've been in discussions about how to do reviews, you know, post that it's important for civilians to be involved, but we haven't gotten to this place yet. It's not that I'm not willing to carry the recommendations forward and work with the police department. I am. It's just I'm not entirely sure what the outcome is going to be. Okay. I just want to be completely honest and transparent with you. This is something that I've been working on for a while to try and get us in a different level of involvement that we're at now, and we aren't there.
Well, I just think that it's important that the public be well informed, that they have all the facts, so that we don't get misperceptions that get spread. And people becoming very emotionally invested in a non-fact. So before we do that, I just think that the whole picture, as Commissioner McGuire was saying, like the whole picture needs to be presented. So as much as is possible, we would like to request that information.
Madam Chair, Mr. Hawkins has his hand raised.
Andrew?
Madam Chair, really quick, like I think one of the things around this that Civil Rights wants to talk about is, you know, like our story's been hard to get out there, and so I think with a lot of the things that have happened recently, we've talked about it internally, and we want to be more deliberate about getting our story out there. So that's something that we want to do. It makes a lot of sense to work with the council, or to work with our commission, sorry, about that, you know, like what that messaging is. But you know what you're talking about, like in terms of like, you know, expressing like opinions and, you know, and facts and all that. I just wanted to like reiterate that like we're very, very, very excited about this, like this going forward with this new group. So for what that's worth, I digress.
Well, thank you. So if there's no further, is there any more discussion? Does anybody else have anything that they would like to add to this? Okay, so then Casey, can we bring it to a vote?
Absolutely. We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Okay.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yeah, aye.
Commissioner Abdi,
Aye.
Commissioner Sarah,
Aye.
Commissioner Crockett,
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobson, Commissioner McGuire,
Aye.
Commissioner Pino,
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks,
Aye.
Commissioner Sylvester.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you, everybody. Oh, my computers. This is like unbelievable that I'm even actually able to do all this. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is our February orientation. I guess we'll be going over a historical overview of the POC purpose functions, review of subcommittees, because yes, in March we will be forming subcommittees and appointing members, yes, and then our support, which is the OPCR, Department of Civil Rights, and the Office of City Clerk.
Madam Chair, there was a brief synopsis that was sent out with the agenda, and I don't know, Ted, can you pull up the summary of the February proposed orientation program? And I believe, Madam Chair, that Mr. Reed might be able to speak more towards the intent of the orientation program that's been proposed, given the fact that there are a lot of new commissioners and a lot of changes just in terms of the staffing and support provided starting this year for the PCOC. So I believe Mr. Reed might have some comments on this one.
Absolutely. Thank you, Casey. If it please the chair, I would just let everybody know that really this is an opportunity for us to give you a good background of what we do and how we can help moving forward, but also to give that important foundational understanding about what the PCOC does every day and its important work moving forward. I don't have too much more to add than that. I did want to note that these are tough times, and so we have to make sure that we work together on all of this. And the best way to get the information to you outside of being in person to do the directives here, as noted in the PCOC orientation document, is to do it electronically in a virtual way. But we are always open to questions. As you take a look at the document there, if you see anything that you would like to include or you had questions about, you can reach out to staff. You can reach out to me directly if you'd like, and we'll try to include or at least answer your questions. I hope that helps.
Madam Chair, as members are digesting the proposed, I'll say that the chair is rejoining the meeting, and as she rejoins the meeting, I would say that as the commissioners are digesting this proposed outline for an orientation program in February, I will have to take responsibility for the fact that the materials associated with item number 8, which are the case synopses to be presented for summarization at the March meeting, are not in our possession, and I don't want to waste time given the hour. It's almost 9 o'clock. I would suggest, if the commission is amenable to this proposal, if we have an orientation program, which will be a public meeting between now and that March meeting, I would propose to email to all of you that list of case synopses, and that at the February meeting, we can be prepared to make that selection with the expectation that the case summaries be submitted well in advance of the agenda posting for the March meeting. So with apologies, I simply don't have the materials to share tonight on item number 8.
I think your proposal is acceptable. Commissioner Sarah, were you speaking?
Commissioner Sarah, so moved what
Yeah.
Mr. Carl just said.
Are we
So-
all?
So if there's no objection, Madam Chair, I would just expect that you would direct the clerk to make that happen. We don't need to take a formal vote. I will make sure that the follow-up happens as I've promised. I don't know if there are other questions. I know there were some technical difficulties that created a problem, and you're joining us again, but I don't know if there are questions from the commissioners about the proposed orientation. I know Mr. Reed had some general comments. I think it's a great time to level set. I mentioned a couple times this is my first meeting, and I want to really appreciate my team, Ted and Ian from the clerk's office, and Mr. Hawkins and Director Jafar and everyone who've made it an easy transition for me. It's my goal, as I stated, to help build upon the successes in the past and so many new members. I do believe there are opportunities for us to improve the processes, and I think that tonight is a good start for that. So I appreciate all of your indulgence with us as we get through this first meeting and this first transition, and look forward to this orientation in February. So thank you for that.
All right, so directed, Director Jafar. We will wait until February to make our choices. And if there is no further business on the table or any further discussion, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Or we don't do that. Do we take a roll? Or can
No,
I?
without objection, you have the authority to adjourn the meeting with no further business.
So are there any objections? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you everyone for attending and all of the help that you've provided for all of us new commissioners.
Nicely done, Madam Chair, nicely done. And thank you to all the commissioners.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Well done, everybody. Thank
Good
you.
job. 100%
Yes.
agreed.
Fantastic. Congratulations, Vice Chair Abdi.
Thank you. Congrats to yourself.
Yes. All right. I'll be speaking to everyone soon. Thank you.